smaller. Sweet. As long as I leave that other monitor up, we're good. Until I can figure out the other thing. All right. Okay. So, I'm Dave. It's Nick. As y'all already know. We had so much fun doing our Crix build, and afterwards we talked for probably another hour, 30, half hour to an hour,
Something like that.
about a topic that's, well, something we talked about before. And we really want to have a little longer form conversation about it. And that is the state of miniatures gaming as it is today. Now, I want to say, yes, we all know that COVID is an issue and it's changed a lot of things that happen in the gaming industry as far as like, and especially in the beginning, getting product from China, uh, you know, those types of things, because a lot of them do have mass production in China. But we're more talking about the state of the game in the last couple of years or so, right? Not just like right this second. Um, so, first thing I want to talk, well, first of all, I have on my, hold on, I got to show my shirt off real quick because I have to give a shout out. So, this is my DRC champion Stephen King shirt. For those of you who don't know, check out 3D Bot Maker's YouTube channel. The man has, I aspire to have the production quality this man has for miniatures games. Like I have for I want to do what he does with his Hot Wheels diecast racing. It sounds odd, but it's fun. I aspire to have the same production value someday in tabletop miniatures gaming he has for the racing, because I feel like I'm watching a race every time, and I want you guys to feel like you're having watching something good, like almost like a sporting event with the miniatures, to make it exciting. So now that that's out of the way, um, so we're talking about miniatures games other than GW.
To start with, we'll hit GW.
Yeah. But anybody who's watched this channel and heard you speak knows that you have specific disdains,
opinions, complaints. Although to be fair, I can do that about everybody.
Yeah.
I want to mention why we're doing probably GW last. Games Workshop is the biggest one in the industry, but because they're so big, their situation is unique. They can do things that other companies can't.
Correct.
And so we're going to treat everybody else first and then get to the special case at the end.
Correct. All right. So, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I can start you if you want.
Yeah, let's go ahead. Why don't you go ahead and I'll lead into the other stuff that I'm thinking about.
I got some general comments I've noted of miniature gaming. I feel like in the last 5 years in particular, miniature gaming has picked up a fair bit in comparison to where it was. And I think a lot of the reason for that is social media. It's easier to get people connected. It's easier to find, hey, I'm interested in this game. Find a community, find a player base to actually go out and play it. Because ultimately, you aren't going to play a miniature game if you have nobody to play with. So it's easier to find people. It's easier to get connected with people. And we've seen more and more new people coming into the hobby. And I think what that's caused is a transition in gaming towards new player friendliness. Some of the older miniature games, War Machine, pre-8th edition Warhammer, Warhammer Fantasy Battles, Infinity, and N2 and N3, were games that were not necessarily newbie friendly.
Right.
War Machine has 10 trillion interactions. 40K is a massive money sink and has a huge buy-in. Warhammer Fantasy Battles, if you can believe it, had an even bigger buy-in. I mean, I've seen Warhammer Fantasy Battles armies that were $1,000. If anybody knows those like 10-man special boxes, like I still call them Dark Elves, but like the Dark Elf, like the Executioners.
Yeah.
They're like $50 US for 10 guys. Okay. You used to field them in 40-man blocks. 4D.
Yeah.
That's not very new player friendly. And in addition to that, there were some mechanics around some of these games that really hurt new players. A very good example is I was demoing Warhammer Fantasy Battles for 2 brand new players. We had Lizards versus High Elves. Lizard Men, first round, get off Chain Lightning. The only High Elf models left on the table after the first Magic phase was a Bolt Thrower crew. Everything else was dead. And when you're a new player, it's very disheartening. You know, how good is this game if your entire army, you never got to play it?
Right.
So I think there's a shift towards mechanics that I don't want to say are necessarily fair, but are more interactive and less apocalyptic. They're more
Correct.
fun to be on the receiving end of. And you're also seeing a shift away from those 300-page rulebooks.
Yes.
You know, every single miniature game that's come out in the last 5 years, the tagline has been streamlining.
And codexes, which we'll talk about later. But
yeah, we'll talk about those. That model is really only used by Games Workshop now.
yeah,
The
so
idea
I'm saying,
that
you're talking about how that kind of went away with the big rule books, but you also went away with, because it used to be that way with other games.
Yeah.
The codex
The only
model
one
was something that other games have tried.
Yeah, the only one I can think of that still really does is Flames of War.
Yeah.
And they're not really codexes. They're more like mixes between codexes and campaign books, where it'll be like they had one that just came out that finally put the SS back into their new edition of Flames of War, which we'll get to that issue in a little while. But we're seeing a shift away from more complicated rule sets. It's more streamlined. I also think we're seeing a shift more towards there's more and more living rulebooks out there, or rulebooks that are easy to acquire.
Right. I mean, the free rulebook model for core rules is like pretty much standard across the industry now. I have come across a few that aren't, but they're like Osprey Publishing doesn't do that for anything that they do, like Gaslands or any of those other ones. But that's all they have. They don't make models for it. They don't do anything.
They don't make the models. Privateer Press's new games, their rules are well, some of the rules are available for free for Warcaster, but like the model stats and all that, they either come with the model or are available for free. I mean, we're driving cost out of the equation. We're driving complexity out of the equation. And I guess complexity might be a bad word. We're pushing towards a new player friendly experience. The games are easier to get in and they're easier to get hooked in. And you can see that with games that have come out recently. Guild Ball, Guild Ball just ended, but I remember Guild Ball was only 5 years old.
Yeah.
It was arguably one of the first in this trend. So you got Guild Ball, you've got the new edition of Heavy Gear coming out. We're doing Warcaster stuff now. All of these games have shifted from what was to what is now a very new person friendly environment.
Well, it's a more varied environment. That is the thing, because whether it was an exact copy or not, that was the thing. Warhammer was the thing, and then you just kind of you didn't want to infringe on their copyrights with their IP, but size of game, turn mechanics, things like that, a lot of times mimicked, because that's what people are used to. And now we're seeing like some inventive ways, like completely new stuff. And let's go ahead and talk about it, because here's the thing. What kind of brought this on, we talked about it before, what kind of brought this on like recently, like a push to have the conversation, was we started playing Warcaster Neo Mechanica. Privateer Press's new game, right? And there are, and for all intents and purposes, it is different from most everything that I've played. Like, I haven't played as many games as you have, but I've seen a lot of games, and I've never seen. I've never seen a game, well, at least in the skirmish version, because we played the skirmish size version. We haven't played the full size version. I'm sure there's some differences, but if it plays anywhere near this, anywhere near the same, I don't think of innovative is the right term, but it's different. And
I think it definitely caters to a more modern taste.
Yeah, but
You're
it
seeing
it
the
is. Go ahead.
as I say, the rules are easy to play. It's
Right.
super easy. You caught on in like one turn. Once you
Yeah.
got one turn, like,
Well,
oh,
I
okay,
think
cool, I got
I
this.
caught on in the first little 5 minute explanation, and then the
Yeah,
first turn just kind of solidified some turns and
yeah.
things. Yeah.
It's really low model count. Even at full size, you're only looking at about $300 in models, which
Yeah, it's
sounds
like
like a
20 or
lot,
30 models,
but that's it.
or
Yeah, it's
20 or
20 to 30,
30. Yeah,
20
20
to
30
30
models.
guys.
Yeah.
You've
Which,
got
for those who
an
don't know, in comparison, what is like a 40K army, 2,000 or 2,500 points is what?
it's 70, 80 models,
Yeah,
and it can very
it's
easily
close to
break
100.
six.
Yeah.
It
Right.
can very easily break $600 to $700.
Yeah.
They're reboxing a lot of things right now, and some price hikes occurred in there that people didn't expect. I
Yeah.
think it's a Storm Raven gunship is now over $100 US.
Yeah. We'll give it.
The Land Raider is now almost 100.
Yeah. So
But well, the point is that $300 may sound like a lot, but in comparison to a lot of other games, it's really not. And that's also the full size Warcaster game.
right,
You can drop it down.
and that's the thing. So you can play the skirmish level of the game while you either collect models to build up to the larger one, or you can or paint or do whatever. This will be the first game that I have the plan. Like I really have the plan. Like I've said it before, but I really have the plan to paint my starter box that I got for the March of Worlds, and then as I get models for it, assembling and painting those models so that when my full size army is done, so I'll work up to actually having my own skirmish size army, right? Then, which I'm not far off of from the starter box, like one more squad, and another warjack, maybe one more solo, and I'm pretty much there. So it's like eight. What is it? 8 units or something?
It's 8 units, but with the way the mechanics work, you don't really need it. You could play 7 pretty handily.
Yeah. So, but I don't want to go too much to that, but
It-
it lends itself to being able to play at any size. I even think like if you just played starter box to starter box, it would be a more compelling game than
and and I think that's a big thing right there because 500-point games of 40K don't play like 40K.
no, they don't.
They don't. It's the way the mechanics work is it can be so one-sided.
Yeah. Well,
Eh,
mechanics and what's put in the box. Let's get this.
mhm,
Let's not get that wrong, because what comes in a Fire Slayer's box is going to be different than what comes in. Oh, sorry, 40K. What comes in a Chaos Space Marine box, it will be different than what comes in Adeptus Mechanicus box, right?
mhm.
So, you know, you're getting different units. So whether that is supposed to be to help set you up to start collecting, a bigger army, and that's like some of the core units, or not, it's still they're not equal.
Yeah.
Each faction is different. I mean, some of them are completely different. Like
Well,
you'll open up and get. Go
each
ahead.
faction is different, and then each box set, different contents, different scale.
Yeah.
I mean, we're on it back into 40K land here, but like the cheapest get starting box for 40K is like 250 points.
Yeah.
I think the guard one is that cheap
Yeah.
because it's literally a Lehman Russ, a 50-point squad, and a character because you can't field the guns separate because that's a stupid decision.
Right.
Right.
But
And then you go to some other ends, and like some of the other ones can push 500 points pretty handily. You and keep in mind that these boxes cost more than a starter box for any other miniature game.
Thing. So yeah. So I mean that's definite. What I
The point we're beating on here is new player friendliness.
Yeah. So
For
I
that,
got. Go ahead.
I'm about to say, go ahead.
I have a starter box for March Awards. You came over, we recorded the video. I'm in the process. If anybody doesn't know, I edit the videos that we record, and I also do the graphics for the Play It Now stuff. I've done for Heavy Gear Blitz so far, but I'm doing one for Adeptus Mechanicus. Not Adeptus Mechanicus. Wow, how to say that? Warcaster Neo Mechanica. And I just said that earlier, but which the way the game plays has also changed the way that I'm making those graphics, because I like to put informational graphics. I like to put like what units are on the table and so on and so forth. But everything is changed. So we played the game. I immediately knew I wanted to play it. Part of that is because that's just what I do. I play a new game and I like it. I want it. There are some exceptions to that. I've played some games. I say I will never play this game because it is terrible. But and then immediately found a starter box, which wasn't necessarily easy if you didn't want to pre-order or pay. I saw some people selling them, $100
But keep in mind, the
or
game's not
more.
actually technically out yet.
Right, because Kickstarter. I mean, that's basically all people got their Kickstarter stuff, and some of them are selling, what they got. Some of the retail stores Kickstarter for backing for retailers, and they have some. Most places like Miniature Market Online, they have pre-order stuff up, and only in limited allocations. So I found a starter, and I got it, and I was impressed by. I mean, one of the things that you always talk about with proprietary dice, because it does have it, is the right amount, which it has more than enough. And everything came. I don't want to get too in depth into like an unboxing type description, but you know, it was a starter box that had like I think if I
Everything.
took it and set those models on the table, which was basically a warjack, a squad, and a couple solos, right? I think that's right.
Hmm.
That we could play a game starter box to starter box, and I think it would come out like the game we already played.
Yeah.
Little more movement required to get into range and so on and so forth, but it would be uh, awesome. Now, I have a question just popped into my head. Do you think that people, uh, okay, people who've been in the space for a while,
Hmm.
and maybe even new players, that if the rules are simple, right, and you don't need a lot of models, they think that it can't be as good as the other game because the other game has this, uh, massive amount of models and the rules are complex and it's really involved. Do you think there's like something, subconsciously they're like, I mean, it can't be as good because there's not as much?
It's an interesting comment because BattleTech has always been a thing, and BattleTech only plays with 2 to 4 models, and no
True.
one has ever accused BattleTech of being a simple system. Now, granted, it does have that large rulebook.
Right.
Um, I think what companies are finding a way to do, and I think people generally tend to realize this, is that you can have simple rules, and by simple, I'm not referring to short. Um, there is too short. The
Yes.
original Age of Sigmar rule set was too short. So long as it conveys the information and gives you a structure to figure things out, that's all you really need.
And it doesn't say the same thing in 5 different places in the
It
book.
doesn't say the same thing in 5 different places. It doesn't use different verbiage and terminology. But then you also look at the fact that models have their own stat card, they have their own rules on them. And I think that's where people can realize that there's complexity to this, because a lot of those low model count games have very rule and interaction heavy models.
Mm-hmm.
You look at 40K and really look at like a Primaris Intercessor squad.
Yeah.
They have almost no special rules.
Yeah.
And all the special rules they have are army wide.
Yeah.
Literally, the only special rules they have are army wide. So, is there any depth to that?
I
I
don't
think
know.
40K. I think 40K's depth is more in its army construction.
We okay. So to kind of put us on or keep us on a track, yeah. Um, so I think it's in its armor construction. I think it's depth. Let's be honest, okay? Other than rules depth, right? Like because you can't play a game of 40K without a discussion about a particular rule coming up at some point during the game. No, I read this and I read it this way and I see it that way. No, it says that you can, it has to be wholly within. Blah, 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 blah. There's like,
It says this. I think they're trying to say
say
this.
that, right.
I
So,
literally am watching that discussion on a 40K Facebook page right now of, do you play as written or do you play by intent? And it's like the fact that this is a debate.
right. It's as written,
And,
people.
and that is one more point I think we didn't bring up is there's a much harder push towards clear, concise, properly written rules. None of this paragraph of mixed fluff and rules mechanics that reads like a bad RPG from 30 years ago.
Correct.
Go read the old Rogue Trader stuff. I remember my friend Donald, he's been playing since Rogue Trader. He's been playing fantasy since the start. Had an issue that they had a problem back when vampires came out, and in the army book, vampires had a rule that gave them a bonus when they were in a unit of like zombies or something like that.
Right.
And the first line of the rule said, "A vampire in a unit of zombies is unkillable."
What?
That was fluff, though, because then the rule explained how, like, okay, well, here's what interactions happen.
Yes.
But they mixed the fluff in with the rule, and people said, "Oh, the vampire is unkillable."
Yep. Yep. Vampires.
That's a thing. But yeah, that just goes back into what we're seeing a push for: clear, concise rule set, new player friendliness. I feel like, so I was having a thought. I'm not sure model count has decreased in general for games.
Okay.
There are more smaller games coming out.
Correct.
But I think that's because of ease of production, not desirability from the customer standpoint.
Well, that's where the variety of game type comes into play. Like Guild Ball it wouldn't fit a large model count. I mean, it's a sports game. You have a sports team, right? You put that many on the table because that's what it is.
Yeah.
You got 6 seat. You got a 5 guys and a mascot. That's just the team size. Blood Bowl. There's 11 guys.
Yeah.
That's just the size of the team.
But
when you're constructing an army in a game, then I think you're right. I think that generally the size hasn't gotten smaller.
We're seeing more smaller games though, and I think it's because it's easier to produce, plain and simple. If you're a startup company, an ultra low model count game is very easy to produce. Even if you're an established company, it's not a huge investment.
No.
But these are also very attractive to new players because low initial investment.
Yes.
You can buy into, we keep harping on Warcaster Neo Mechanica, you can get a skirmish level Warcaster Neo Mechanica army for $150.
Yep.
Handily.
Well, that's the thing. So, okay.
So I mean, that's cheaper than Infinity.
We're talking about the state of miniatures games. I just wanted to kind of reiterate that's what we're talking about. So that brings up a good point. This game, yes, it's a starting game, and we don't know what the bloat's going to look like if it continues down 10 years, right? Let's just throw out a number. 10 years. What's that bloat going to be like? What are the new models going to be? But they have, and we're talking about Warcaster. Warcaster Neo Mechanica. They have a system that can fight that bloat, right? Because your unit is not, if you have a squad, it's not 10 guys. If you have a, you have a warjack, you have a squad, you have a solo, you're going to have vehicles, I think, in the next wave, right? But they're putting vehicles in. But they're one model, right? And then you have your heroes, which we haven't really played with yet, but because they're not out yet. It should be in this next wave as well.
I should be getting mine next month.
But the point I'm making is you have specific set numbers in those types of units, right? So, like, I know in Martial Wars at least, you have the Ranger Heavy support, 3 guys. You have the other support, the other the rifle team or whatever it's called, the fire team. It's 3 guys. And you can't combine 3 guys with 3 guys and make a 6-guy unit, right? When you take a unit, and that's what size it is. And that keeps the model bloat down. Because when you start getting into, let's just, we were building a War Machine army, right? It's not as bad there. But I can take the 10 guys.
It can still hit 50, 60 models, no problem.
I can take the 10 guys, and then I can add another 6 guys. Not to the same unit, obviously, because that's the max size 10 guys.
You can take 10 guys. You can put an attachment on it. You can put some weapon attachments on it.
You can take another 6 guys, which is a smaller unit of the same guys, and as the other ones die, I guess, kind of reform that or something, right? Is that what we're talking about?
Well, Tartarus kills guys. He can chuck guys in the other unit. In either unit.
But that's what I'm saying. So you're basically... War Machine does the same thing. It has set model sizes. They don't get any bigger. You go into AOS and 40K, and it's like, as long as you have the points, if you want to have, if a normal unit of, let's just say, I played Age of Sigmar, Keraton Overlords, uh, what was it? Is it 20? Is it 10 or
30.
20 guys for Arcanauts?
It starts at 10, it goes to 30.
Yeah. So, so it's 10, but you can add another 10 and add another 10, right? And make
Mhm.
it an even larger thing. And I think that that's where people get crazy because that's one unit, right? And as long
Mhm.
as you have the points, if you want to make another 30-man unit, you can, and that just bloats the model count. So,
We refer to that as spamming,
yeah,
where you've got one model, you're taking it a million times. Now, the thing with Sigmar and all that is they are limited. You can't just go infinite size. But the thing is,
well,
we'll cover that in the 40K
but
discussion.
you have an infinite size.
Save the point. We'll hit that in 40K because that'll be.
Well, I think this is an
Yeah.
important point to make here before we move on to another game, or whatever, another thing for this. But I'm just saying it is a limited size for that unit, but
Yes.
nothing's stopping you from making another unit of the
Hmm.
same guys, right? So
Yeah.
because they seem like you need battle
And
lines, and then you can make and
and
they can be whatever
it's.
size.
I guess we can hit it here. It's not, and the thing is, and the thing with the Games Workshop systems is my biggest gripe against them is that's not necessarily a bad choice.
No.
Most models, it's pure numbers.
Yeah.
It's just a numbers game. What do they do? How do they get there? It's how do they do their damage, not what are they doing.
Right.
With
And,
games like Warcaster, with games like Guild Ball, with games like Infinity, you're getting a lot more of a support option where this model may never make an attack,
nope.
but it may win you the game.
It might. Well,
And that's almost unheard of in 40K. And
that's the other thing though. It's truly objective based play, right? You brought up Infinity. Infinity is truly objective based play.
mm-hmm.
You can kill everything on the board and win, I guess, but
You can kill everything on the board and lose.
exactly. So you have to play the objectives, and I think there's some games, and I won't even point out 40K or AOS as like the only ones. There are some games that lack for real objectives.
War Machine's a good example. The
I'm talking,
scenario,
yeah, real
yeah,
objectives.
the scenario in War Machine, the stated purpose of the scenario is just to serve a purpose to get you to fight.
Yeah.
So that the optimal strategy isn't just sit back and shoot from a million inches away. It's to mash in the middle and fight.
Yeah. So, since we're talking about say the gaming industry, the miniatures gaming industry as a whole, we can see over all the games that we play. I mean, or have played. You can see great things in some games, and you can see great things in other games, and you can see bad things in those games. And sometimes you just want to like smash them together and just be like, "Hey, this would be a good game," but even then, it would have its problems.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Turns out game design's not easy.
No, it's not. I'm in the middle of that right now. It's not.
You're designing your own. I'm helping with heavy gear. It is comical the number of things that have to go into considerations for what seems like a trivial and obvious change.
Well, every time you change something, it changes something else. It's like the butterfly effect thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was having a discussion with the guy who does the heavy gear testing, and they're like, I made a suggestion. He's like, that's not an option, but we have to be careful because that means putting an extra part in this kit, which means that the price break for the kit for profitability is off, which means we might have to raise the price on that kit, and there's data to show that if you're missing parts for weapon options, it decreases sales. And it's like, this is for what seems to be such an obvious, trivial thing. No, it's not.
No. So that brings me to the point of this discussion is not necessarily a bash. I mean, there's so much that goes into these games. We're not in that industry as far as like we're not established in that industry. Like Nick said, he's been helping with the rules for Heavy Gear Blitz, which is a game that we really like. And I am a first-time game developer when it comes to both an RPG and a miniatures game, and I'm seeing that as I'm going along in it. There's a bit more to it than you might think, right? So
the armchair game designers have truly no comprehension of what they're talking about.
No, and I've been
Nothing has shown me that, and I'm not even seriously involved in this stuff.
yeah.
I'm more of like just kind of tangential to it, and I'm like, wow, it's astounding how much there is.
Yeah, especially when you're talking miniatures games. Especially when you talk miniatures games. Because unless you're developing everything. Like one number off here affects the rest of the numbers
Mhm.
in that uh, team or that category, and then those numbers have to be somewhat balanced against the numbers for everything else. And then someone's going to find that interaction, right? So that interaction that just breaks everything. So you have to plan for that. Play testing has to be done because they're going to break it, and then you got to see if you can fix it. So I brought that up to say we understand. We understand that this is not, it's not a simple thing.
It is, but
But
the first step in improvement is criticism, is
but
realizing what's not working.
but you can't live in your own vacuum and not listen to the people who are telling you this is what's going on, and that's kind of why we're doing this. Hopefully someone sees it and says, hey, they got some points. So let's get on to those. So we've played Warcraft Neo Mechanica, and what it's brought up is, well, first thing I'd like to point out is it seems that every
Are
time
we doing are we doing our GW transition?
not yet.
Okay.
We're what I anyway, you threw me off there. What I was gonna say is, I don't know about you. When I play a game, one of the first things that I do, at least in the first couple of games, is and sometimes in later games, is I say to myself or to the person I'm playing with, like we were talking today, oh that plays kind of like this game. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
that thing kind of reminds me of this game. The design of that model reminds me of X, Y, or Z. Um, do you find that I mean, you find that you do that
I find that I do
often?
it, but it's not really a conscious effort. When you're watching a movie, it's kind of hard to have an original movie nowadays
Yeah,
because so much of it's been done. Somebody's done it something.
right.
Okay. And miniature games strike me as that, where it's like I hear people complain about, oh, this looks, I hear Warcaster complain too, oh, that's just Infinity. Because sci-fi, like futuristic, like cyberpunk, is a unique IP to Infinity. I don't understand the point. Like, okay, so
Well,
what?
I think Warcaster lends itself more to an Infinity type game, not just because of its setting, but because of the tactics, right?
Yeah, I'm thinking more in terms of model design.
Yeah,
I
model
hear people
design.
look at the models and say, "Oh, look, Privateer Press just made their own ripoff of Infinity," and it's like, because Infinity's an original concept.
Yeah,
Cyberpunk sci-fi with really hard line and panels and all that's unique. I play video games. I've seen this stuff in games like Mass Effect. Um, name it. It's not unique. And while I do it, well, to get back to your question, yeah, I do these things, but I don't really pay attention to them because they're so common it's meaningless. If you went through and you point out every single similarity to every other game out there, who cares?
right.
Are you suggesting they copied off of it? Because like I said, there's hardly any original ideas out there. Find me a original fictional concept.
Right.
We haven't seen one in a long time that's really gotten any traction.
No, I hear you.
And it's like, even within that, like, okay, sci-fi. You're going to have the grimdark sci-fi. You're going to have the like almost cyberpunk, neo-futuristic sci-fi, and that's kind of where Warcaster falls.
Sorry, keep
And
going. I was just trying to.
it's just, I see those comments and like I recognize it. I see what's going on. I see it where it's like, oh, this reminds me of this mechanic. I don't care, and I actually get kind of annoyed when people start making those comparisons as like, oh, look, you ripped off this. It's like, no,
No.
no.
Yeah.
Did the last fantasy movie you ever watched rip off Lord of the Rings because it has swords in it?
Yeah, exactly. I was talking more of mechanics, but
Well,
like
the mechanics too, where it's like,
I compare the dice that we roll in Warcaster to X-wing dice because
yeah,
they're
you're gonna see it
similar.
with
And like,
X-Wing, you're gonna see it with Legion, Privateer Press, other
yeah,
games. I don't look at that and say, "Oh, look, they copied off X-Wing."
no,
That's my point. Um, but that's the thing is, there's so many games out there. There's so many game companies. There are a shocking number of designers who have worked for multiple companies.
right.
I think the guy at it's either I think it's Mantic or Warlord. I think it's Warlord. Rick Priestley, like the guy who originally wrote Warhammer,
Yeah.
writes other miniature games.
Yeah. Well,
Unsurprisingly, those games share a lot of DNA with each other, and who cares?
We were talking about Crisis Protocol,
Mhm.
and
The
how
entire design staff for that's ex-Privateer Press employees.
yeah,
It feels like War Machine because it was written by the people who helped make War Machine.
yeah. So
That's what it is.
it's all we see that in video games as well. Like people just hopping back and forth, and then there's some similar feel that comes from what they do because we've dealt with their what they do before. So, which brings up a question. Okay, we talked about this question, and you've had some time to think about it because it was a bit perplexing for both of us when we first brought it up a couple days ago. And I think it's a good time to. Well, are there any other games that you want to, before I do that? Any other games that you want to bring up that
I'm not going to mention genres because I
genres?
think within miniature gaming there's a number of genres. The highly competitively focused games, I'm not going to say that they're shrinking in popularity,
Mm-hmm.
but they're starting to realize that you need that low level beginner player investment.
Yes.
You cannot make chess the miniature game because no one will play it.
Right.
It's too hard to get into because everyone could be playing against a grandmaster. Historical miniature games, there's a million of them out there. It's hard to get a gauge on the community, but I feel like it's not growing as fast as the other areas. I continue to see a degree of elitism out of that particular crowd. I remember there's a YouTube channel I watch. They're called Little Wars TV. Fantastic. Yeah. They did a Star Wars Legion battle report where they played Star Wars Legion, and there's literally a guy on there who commented and said, "This is the death of gaming. This isn't even wargaming." And it's like that attitude is not going to buy you any friends with the people who play these games. And spoiler alert, 40K and I'll bet you Legion probably outsells pretty much any historical game out there.
Well, yeah, it's got a Star Wars brand on it. Of course it does.
Exactly. So if you're going to come to people and say, "Hey, come play my game, it's better. Star Wars Legion sucks and it's the death of miniature gaming," how are you attracting new people? Yeah. You're immediately turning them off. And
historical has always been.
I remember. But it feels like there's still a degree of elitism there.
Yeah.
I remember a few years back, it was a big deal that I think it's Historicon opened up non-historical gaming.
Yeah.
If Adepticon tomorrow announced that, hey, we're going to have historical gaming area, everybody would celebrate.
Let's go.
Historicon was a controversy.
Oh yeah.
Ooh. And it's like I get why, you're playing a historical scenario. This is not history. I've literally seen somebody look at a Warhammer Fantasy army and you could just see their brain melting. And it's like, hold on. Spearmen, you have cavalry. You have these analogs there. It's just, there's randomly a dragon in the background.
Right.
But
which brings up a good point. If you want to finish, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
All right.
Go ahead.
Let's do that. Okay. So we can basically, there's little things. We can basically go back to Little Wars, right? Mm-hmm. H.G. Wells made Little Wars the game, which basically he's kind of considered a lot of people don't even know this, but he's kind of considered like the one of the almost a creator of like hobby gaming, right? Because they had 10 soldiers, they had lead soldiers, they had that kind of stuff, right? Don't get me wrong. But he put it into a package that, although confusing, because I've read the little
he put it into a uniform. He wrote down a uniform set of rules.
Yeah.
For people to play toy soldiers with, and miniature gaming started off that, and fundamentally they just did historical scenarios.
Exactly. So, and he actually wrote like a continuation of that with like another scenario. which is Floor Games, I think it was called,
Yeah.
where he expanded on it, and that was expanded on it a little bit, but also talked about some other stuff. Um, so that was, the point I have is that was someone taking something that was there, okay, and basically, arguably, the spring-loaded cannon, right? That's used in Little Wars, because in Little Wars you actually launch a projectile which knocks over soldiers, and that's how they die. Okay, so there's no like I flip a coin or roll a die or whatever and see how many hits I get. It's like I launched a projectile, they fall over. Guess what? They're dead. And if the guys die around the cannon, you have to bring more guys in to move it around, because if you don't, it just sits there and it can be captured by your enemy. But my point is that you have a toy that was not created for anything other than being a toy that shot a projectile, because that's fun for kids, right? Who didn't like Rocket Man, whatever, the prototype Boba Fett that got canceled because he shot a missile. How many of those toys did we really love? Where you put something in the toy and you press the button and it shoots it across the room. So he had a toy, and then he made a rule set on it. Okay, so not because he had to, not because it was necessary. You could continue moving your little toy soldiers around and pretending that it's a battle from 1812 or whatever, right? But he made a rule set for a game. But it was actually an objective. It wasn't just recreating a battle, it was an objective. And you played a game, and whoever was better at aiming won the game. How much do you think that we've strayed away from not that particular type of game, but that the creativeness? Yeah, it's hard to find original themes and scenarios. That fantasy's fantasy, sci-fi is sci-fi, but it's been a while since I've seen a game that strayed away from the norm when it comes to mechanics, right? And actually tried to do something that was out of the ordinary, right? They all use tape measures. They all use, you know what I mean? Like, yes, those are great tools.
They're pulling from a library of existing mechanics, effectively,
Exactly.
is what you're saying. Um, it's hard to say. There are I'd agree with you that there are very few like you can point to unique mechanics coming out.
Right.
Most of the time, it tends to come from exploring a new area. Guild Ball being a really good example of it worked with a lot of things that didn't exist before that. The idea of a momentum mechanic was kind of unique to Guild Ball.
Yeah.
This mechanic that you generated and spent throughout the turn, and I wish more games would adopt it. But it just, I'm going to counter that with the question. Go back to the movie discussion.
Mm-hmm.
When was the last time we saw an original, like a completely original style movie? Yeah, there might be a twist. Yeah, there might be some details on it, but like a major like storyline styling difference.
Yeah, definitely. No,
And
it's been a long time. But
sorry, go ahead.
what I'm saying is, I remember going to a garage sale. Okay, this is a story, one of my gaming stories as a child, right? Going to a garage sale and finding a toy. It was a board game called like Catapults and something, or Castles and Catapults, or some, I don't even know what it's called anymore, but it had like real action
Catapults.
catapults and cannons and whatever, right? So I also have a game in my closet that's called Chopper Strike, and it was crazy for its time because it had
You ever
two
heard?
play services. It
You ever
had
heard
the
of a game?
board, it had the clear plastic one on top for the helicopters, right? So tanks on bottom, helicopters on top.
Have you ever heard of a game called Toy Wars?
I've heard that name, but I don't.
It's a rule set that basically says take a toy, we're going to give it some stats, and you're going to play a game with it.
I've heard of
And
it,
it's
but I've
kind of
never
in
looked
that
at it.
vein. They never really got a lot of traction because I think again going back to this, like what are we looking at for a new player? To have a clear, concise, functional rule set that's simple enough for a new player to digest, but can then also handle literally any action figure you can buy, might not be the best. And I don't know, they never seem to take off because,
Well,
like I said, I've seen that one. There's a rule set for Gundam using high grade Gundam models.
yeah.
I know all these things exist, but I don't see them that often. And
Well, there are a lot of games out there that have rules and no models, right? So, like I said, Gaslands being one of the more recent ones that I've seen, where Osprey puts out the book, and you are left to your own devices to decide. They give you a suggested scale of your cars, which turns out to be, right close to Hot Wheels, right? So they're ready, available. People modify them and use them. Um,
Mhm.
you know, but you can do it at any scale, right? I can play gas stands with micro machines if I want, right? The
Mhm.
measurements become a little bit out of size, but you know what I mean. I can play it with whatever I want. There's a game called Gnomes that I'm really interested in, just strictly because it's gnomes. But you know how I am about gnomes, dwarfs, and
Yeah.
goblins and stuff. And there's a company that makes models for that rule set, but it's not not the person that wrote the rules.
Yeah.
So
I, I I think the style of game you're talking about doesn't do so hot in the US because of our particular geographical dynamics.
we talked about
Um, for anybody who's not familiar, there's a huge cultural difference between Europe and the US when it comes to gaming. Europe is much more what we refer to as beer and pretzels. You're playing with your friends in their basement. In the US, that doesn't really work that way. It's because we're so spread out that, how close are you to somebody who plays the same game you do? It could be a 20, 30-minute car ride, no, easily.
and we
And that,
are a very competitive society.
well, yeah, the competitive society as well adds to this. But that's that push, at least stateside, for clear, concise rule sets to games that are easy to pick up. Because if they're easy to pick up, you can get more players. If they have a clear and concise rule set, if you're playing against somebody that you're not terribly familiar with, you're still playing the same game. You don't have to worry about, well, how are they going to treat this or how are they going to treat this? Our consumption is at a store usually or at some pre-established location.
And we want it in a box.
We're going to be playing. You may not be playing against somebody you know that well.
Yeah.
I've played games against 40K people that, honestly, I forget their name when they're not standing in front of me.
Yeah.
And they're local.
Yeah.
That's just the thing. I think that style of game where it's a little more, I don't want to say relaxed, but a little more open like that, at least stateside, doesn't necessarily work so well. Because again, it goes back to that you kind of need people of the same mind.
And then again, um, yes, people of the same mind, but I think it's in the presentation. I really think it's in the presentation because I think that let's just use example like it's an obscure game, but like I said, that gnomes game, right? I
Mm-hmm.
only know of it because I was searching for gnomes one day and I come across this book that's about this game. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known, right? Now, I'm not
Okay.
talking like $1 million marketing campaigns here, but if you really want your game to be successful, you have to put it in people's faces, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, there are
And
get, but
I think
people think that means um, you have to have like all this signage to go in stores, and you have to have all this physical things or whatever. But to this
uh,
day and age, you know, there are tools available to you that don't cost you anything but time, right? And yes,
social media.
you can put money into them and make them even more monstrous of
Mm-hmm.
tools, right? And reach more people. But I think some of the games that you're discussing and some of the games that I've seen in the past suffer from that that mentality of oh, they're going to a game store. If we can just get it on the shelf, then they'll find it and they'll do something with it. But how many people still don't make how-to tutorials of their own, right? How many people refuse to take their phone, put it above a table, and play their game for people and say this is how it works?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're like, well, we have to put production on it. That's good. Look, man.
It's exposure. The
Look, man,
exposure is so critical nowadays.
phone or any camera that has a decent quality, right? But phones are ridiculous now. Everybody has one in their pocket, and they're at least 1080p, right? At least 1080p or 1080 resolution, which is perfect, fine. $6 lights from Walmart, okay, with floodlight bulbs, okay. That'll get you some light that you can play, and then I would be convinced if you already have a phone, for if you really want to do it, 20 $25, maybe $30, you can make your own how-to videos for the game that you're putting out. Are they going to be
Hmm.
massive things? Massive. It's all what you put into it. Maybe they just don't have the time. But if I were to take, like I said, the game that I'm trying to develop now with some other people, which I'm not ready to talk about, but um, if I take and play that game like we played other games on the channel, and I add some graphics to it to make it a little, dress it up a little bit, which that's a free program that I use. It's just GIMP and DaVinci Resolve, which is free. Unless you want to do some crazy, crazy stuff, it's all free. Um, and you take a little time and put it in there and make a how-to video, right? This is how you play it, and put it out there on your YouTube channel, promote it on Facebook, promote it on Instagram, so on and so forth, whatever it is. And then from there, build upon that with more information about your game. Hey, let's take a look at this particular model. What did we, how did we go, when it went into, this is how this model plays, right? Or this is how that unit plays. This is how, you know what I mean? This is how this interaction works. Go over your rules. Take some
Yeah,
time.
I think you're pointing out one thing because a question we brought up a few days ago is how are games like Heavy Gear so small, whereas say Warhammer is so big? How do you get this? And I think the answer is exposure.
Yeah.
Look at companies and ask yourself the question: which ones have YouTube channels that do things like how to plays and all that?
Yep.
Those are the ones that you're seeing a lot more. Warhammer has a highly active YouTube channel. No, they aren't always doing how to play videos, but there's painting tutorials, there's discussions going on, you name it. Privateer
There's
Press,
something.
when they're in the shop, has a very active YouTube channel. They have a weekly stream schedule. There's at least
Yep.
something going on every day. Corvus is putting all their new releases on there and putting official how to play videos on there. And I know where the Heavy Gear channel is. It's not what you think it is. And there's a couple of videos from like 5-6 years ago, and they're not that good.
Yeah. Well, and like I said, and I love the game, and we'll continue to make videos on it. There's no problem.
Absolutely.
But, um, you know, we have a limited exposure as of right now. I mean, we have like 260 subscribers. We're trying to build that up, but it's just um, if you're going to take I know it takes a lot of time. I know it takes a lot of effort. I know that Mr. Dubois takes a lot of time putting things, doing this and doing that and doing the other, right? For Heavy Gear Blitz
Mm-hmm.
and everybody else, the Rooster, the whole 9 yards, right? Everybody's busy doing something. But in this day and age, it's not like you have to go and sign a contract and have some dude come in and film your commercial and put it on television
You don't
and
need to. You don't need to be a
distribute
video
it through
professional.
cable networks and all that other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You can make your own. You can get someone to make it for you that's willing to do it because they love the game. You can then take that, for free or a very low price, and then you take that and you put it everywhere you possibly can. You put it on your YouTube channel, and then you promote your YouTube channel everywhere. And I could take some of that. Like I could do more promoting for our YouTube channel, but right now I'm busy trying to make videos. So, but
I mean, you need a product to promote.
yeah, exactly.
That's the short answer.
Well, that too, but
Um,
I'm talking about the YouTube channel itself. What game now? Like
there needs to be content on it. That's what I meant.
exactly. So we got to keep
You're advertising the YouTube channel. You need to build the YouTube channel to
exactly.
advertise.
So we'll just keep making videos and keep telling people to share it, and we'll put it out when we can, and that's it. But we are making an effort to put it out there through the people that watch it. And even if that was the only effort they did, that a company would do, is to record some of the process of making things, record a how-to video, record new model profiles when you got something new that comes out, and put it on a place where everybody knows to go. Not just your Facebook page; it's a good place, but or even if it is just your Facebook page.
You have Facebook, you have Instagram, you have Twitter.
Yeah, but
At
even if
least though, you should at least be on those three.
I think you should at least be on Facebook if you're a company. If you're a person, you probably should avoid it like the plague. I don't, but I probably should because it's terrible. But if you're a business, Facebook, Instagram for your instant things, right? If you just want to paint you're painting models, or you got some new designs and new 3D designs or whatever. Poof, take a picture of it or put a video up of it spinning around, and you pop it up on Instagram real quick and say, hey, it's here. But that I think that's the thing. And these smaller companies that or these companies like DreamPod 9 and Steamforged, one is still out there. There are a number of them. There are a number of companies. I mean, I don't consider Privateer Press small. They've been around for long enough. I mean, they got like 20 years of Iron Kingdom's lore, and they've just been putting stuff out. You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy. But these other companies, like, even ones that aren't really doing anything anymore, like with the Wrath of Kings guys, right? They were their own little company thing first, and then Cool Mini or Not took them over.
So Song of Ice and Fire is pushing fairly heavily because one of the things that I think does really well is the development team does like live streams and they talk to people.
Yep.
When was the last time you saw a Wrath of Kings live stream?
Well, anything from Wrath of Kings.
Exactly. That's my point. I think there's a distinct trend that the more you can put out there, the more exposure you get. Generally, the better received the game is, and I think that's the order it works in.
Well, it's consistency. Like, if I know that you're going to put something, I don't need you to put out something every hour of every day. But if you put out something once a week,
you still owe me some title cards.
Yes. Did you already make the video?
I got 2 of them done.
Okay. So I'm upping my title card game too, by the way. So it took me a little longer.
That's all right. You reminded me
I have to show you that still. But anyway, the thing is that there are so many games out there. There are a lot of crappy games out there. There are a lot of good games out there. There are some great games out there that no one has ever heard of. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And the main reason for that, well, there's a few reasons for that. We've talked about one. They're not getting the exposure. But let's talk about something else. I'm trying to avoid getting into the GW discussion until I've covered everything else, because once we go into that hole, we're not coming out.
We're not coming out.
So, just making sure there wasn't anything else that I wanted to put out there. Okay, before we go,
I'm good.
Before we go into the GW hole,
I'm ready to jump. I'm ready to jump in the hole.
Before we go into the GW hole, I want to tell anybody who's watching or anybody, share it around. Do not make assumptions about games that are out there just because of what you're used to. Okay, if you're used to 40K, the adage of if it's not 40K, it's crap. You know what I mean? Like, it's not my game because I play 40K. Stop it and take a look around. Right? I know you're strapped for cash because you're spending all that money on 40K. All right, but there are some games out there that need to have your attention.
Yeah, I'm a tech. Go ahead. Sorry, I was about to say I have 2 things to tack on when you're done.
All right, take that time, because here's what's going to. The reason why you don't do it, number one, is you're in the cult. All right, you're in a cult. All right. Number 2, you're afraid that you're going to find something else you like and have to leave the cult. All right. But look, man, there are other things out there. And then we're going to talk about here in a second some tangentially and like kind of not so many words, reasons why you might want to look at leaving the cult because it is a
Are,
cult.
okay, I'm going to spoil a little bit of RGW's discussion. It's going to be a summary of how are they still this big, yet there's still so many problems.
Yeah, it's a cult.
But are you finished? Because I got
Yeah,
two
go ahead
things
and
to tack
tack
on
on.
there. First one I want to tack on there is the money situation. It's okay to leave something if you have a lot of money in it. It
Yep.
really is. And another thing with this is nobody's saying quit 40K.
No.
What we're saying is for the price of a get starting box and 2 extra kits, which is maybe 700 points of models, you could completely buy into other miniature games and be done.
How
$150 is 2 heavy gear starters, and you never have to buy another model again.
for those people who played Warhammer for 10 years plus, how many new armies have you created? Right? How many times have you taken and you know what? I'm kind of bored with this army, or they weren't bored of that army. They screwed my army over. Okay, so I need to find something else to play until they bring it back to where it needs to be. And for a lot less, you could try something that's not going to give you
Completely
that
different.
disappointment every single time you turn around. But anyway, was that all you wanted to tag on to that one? Was that
So to bring up cost, the train left the station. I'm not sure where it went.
for the cost of just a starter set, the couple
It
of
was a
boxes,
cost, but it was the thing before cost you were talking about.
a cult?
I'll think of it.
The fact that it's a cult. All right,
Yeah, it'll randomly pop up at some point.
that's fine.
Are we ready to tackle GW now?
Yeah.
All right. So I think we actually answered our own question of why are they still so successful, and the answer is exposure. Have you ever looked at GW's stock report? It's a fascinating document.
Well, the fact that they have a stock report.
Well, it's a fascinating document because they make they make a shockingly large amount of money. I think they make more money off of licensing than they do actual product sales.
Oh yeah.
And it turns out that licensing doesn't cost you anything but some lawyer fees to read the contracts.
Yeah.
So you're going to get a lot of extra capital floating around.
So
you're
then
getting
they create a game and then forget about it in 6 months.
a heap of exposure. There are people who know about 40K who have no comprehension whatsoever. It's a miniature game.
Yeah.
One of my favorite comics, I believe this is a Kelvin and Hobbes comic. They're getting ready for Halloween, and Kelvin shows up to his dad's got a costume for him, and Kelvin says, "No, I want to be Tactical Sergeant Tarkus of the Blood Ravens 5th Company." That's a Dawn of War 2 reference.
Yeah.
It's just completely out of nowhere in a comic book on like a Sunday morning in the middle of nowhere, Arkansas.
Comic strip, yeah.
40K is in the lexicon of the regular world, even though people don't know it's a miniature game. Star Wars is another good example. The Star Wars miniature games are hugely popular because it's Star Wars.
Yep.
The Game of Thrones one got a very big initial following because it's Game of Thrones.
Yep.
When you have an established IP, that helps a lot. And one thing I want to point out to other companies, your brand is more than just a miniature game. It's an IP. Don't be afraid to use it. Games Workshop has novels. They have video games. They have an animated TV series coming out. They have the miniature product. They have board games. You can buy Warhammer Monopoly at Walmart.
Yep.
That's how you get the needle in to get the rest of the plastic cracking.
Yep.
Okay. And I think that's why GW continues to be the juggernaut that they are. They have nailed the marketing.
It's a cult.
Now, the problem that I have with GW is they have nailed the marketing, created this wonderful structure. I open the door and I'm just seeing rotting wood and everything. Yep. It's about ready to fall over. Let me talk about a few things that I think hurt them. Number one, the Codex release model in general. Your army gets updated. Fantastic. All right, great. Your army's not going to get anything new for the next 3 to 4 years. Right. And during that 3 to 4 years, Games Workshop is not going to stop coming up with new ideas and new mechanics.
Right.
We saw it in Warhammer 40K when Space Marines got the successor tactics, where you could build your own Space Marine chapter. Yes. Nobody had that. And they had to put it in their campaign book series frantically to get people to be able to do that with other armies. Space Marines were the first army to get a bonus for playing purely Space Marines. And we're seeing that roll out to more and more armies now. Here's the thing, though. If you're playing some of those older codexes, you aren't getting these toys for years. What if your codex came out just before that last Space Marine codex, which I think Chaos Space Marines was? Chaos Space Marines got an updated book for 8th edition, and then Space Marines came out with all the new toys, and the Chaos players are like, it's going to be 3 or 4 years before we get a new book when we might get some of these new toys.
Right.
I mean, the other issue is, one thing I've noticed in all miniature gaming is that releases that come out at about the same time tend to be on about the same power level. When you do the codex model, that means you have one faction on one power level, and then the next one comes out, it's on a different power level, and typically it's higher. Okay, it's not always, but the general trend is upwards as time goes on. Sorry, this way. As time goes on, the power level creeps up and up and up. When we were playing Age of Sigmar in our area before the 2.0 came out and effectively killed it in our area, we were holding a league. And it was a, I forget what their name is, but it's where you have units and they get bonuses and you kind of have a persistent army. I forget what they call it. We played that. Final 4, Legions of Nagash, Idoneth Deepkin, Daughters of Cain, Maggotkin, the 4 most recent books. Those were the top 4.
You're talking
the rest
about
of
the
them,
progression stuff, though?
Yeah, the progressive thing where it's like play your game and you can get like a special relic or what, I forget what it's called. It's like Crusade for 40k, but in Age of Sigmar. I forget what it's called.
Is it like Path of War?
It's Path to Glory. Path to Glory is the name.
Yeah.
We're playing a Path to Glory campaign. We get to the final battle. The last 4 armies standing are the 4 most recent army books.
Oh yeah.
Nobody else came even close. It wasn't even a contest about that.
Well, I think there's 2 things that lend to that, really.
Like that whole model just blows my mind. Like, and the other issue is this is a $50, $60, this is a $40 to $50 book coming out. You have to buy it.
You have to have it.
If you play some armies, you're getting supplements on top of that. You're getting campaign books on top of that. If you want to play Space Marines right now, I think it's potentially 6 books that you need for your army to play it.
Yep.
All of them cost $40 to $50. And keep in mind, we already established the models are not cheap.
No.
It's $1,000 to play 40K.
Any scale, yes. Yeah.
And I'm referring to the 2,000 point level,
Yeah.
but a 2,000 point level, and you're using all the tools available to you. It's $1,000.
Yep.
And a lot of people don't realize that, and they don't talk about that when you have your initial product. You buy a box of Warhammer, nowhere does it mention, hey, go buy your codex.
Exactly.
You buy a get starting box, it doesn't tell you that.
Nope.
So part of the problem is, like, we had a situation here in Fort Smith that happened fairly recently. A kid came in, well, I say kid, maybe 16 to 18 area, late teens. He bought into Blood Angels, and he just bought kits that he thought looked cool, spent all his money on kits. And then we had to break it to him and said, yeah, by the way, you're missing 99% of your rules. You need another $50 purchase. And it took him 6 months to get the money together because kid.
Yeah.
And, for that 6 months, he almost quit 40K off of it because he'd play a game and his opponent would just trash him because his opponent has all of their rules available to them.
I think some of that changes a little bit with the addition, like AOS.
I think
with the addition of the app.
I think it makes it worse.
Well, I know in AOS, I haven't looked at the full disclosure. I haven't used the 40K app yet. But if it's
go outside, go to the gas station, buy 10 gallons of gas, chuck it in a dumpster, and light it on fire, and you have a good approximation of the 40K app.
Well, I know with the AOS app, you could at least build your army, right? Mm-hmm. You didn't have access to the battle groups or whatever they call them.
The battalions.
But you could build your army. You got your point values. If you wanted the other stuff, you had to buy your book through the app, and they would open up the battalions. But you could get away with the core rules are online for free.
Mm-hmm.
You had your app, which lets you build, um, build your armies, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you wanted to use it in any solid way, you'd end up having to spend 99 cents a month or whatever it was for the Azure or whatever,
Yeah, which isn't bad.
which
That's
isn't
fine.
bad. And then you had everything, but then the only thing that you would need after that is the General's Handbook, or whatever they call it, right? That was called the General's Handbook, which is like chapter approved or whatever for
Mm-hmm.
40K, where it goes through and it shows you, point values and stuff. But you only needed it for match play stuff, really.
Yeah. You
So
could play open play 40K with just what's in there. All right. Here's the problem with the 40K app right now. All the 8th edition content is in the app. Okay, cool. The catch is you got to subscribe to the app. The app's $5 a month, which isn't bad. Really think about it, $5 a month for all the 8th edition content sounds pretty good.
one book,
Here's the
$10.
problem though. Here's the problem though. Chapter approved is not in it, so you still need this physically. Okay. And when the Space Marines and Necrons come out in October, their 8th edition rules are going to disappear. And you know what's going to happen? Nothing.
Nothing. Yeah.
You have to buy the codex, which will give you a digital code to put on the app that you're already paying a subscription for, to get any of your rules on the app and to use the army builder. You cannot view anything without the subscription paywall, and you need to already purchase a physical codex to see any of that past that. Why am I not just paying $10 a month and you just give me everything?
Yeah, just give it.
I don't understand. I was talking to somebody and they're like, "Oh, well, they don't make as much money off that." My response is bullshit. Bullshit. Let's say this edition lasts 3 years, which is what the last one did. That is 36 months of subscription fee.
Yeah.
Okay, $360. Now, you've already built the app. You got to do some web development. You got 1 million people buying this. Let's say 100 of that goes to supporting the app. And that's an aggressively high number. If anybody who knows IT, that's an aggressively high number. So $260. That is equivalent to 6 codexes. Are you going to buy 6 codexes in the life of a 3-year edition?
Nope.
No. And GW is making all of that in profit because we already covered the maintenance fee. Every penny of that is profit to them.
Yep. And you already have the layout already done for your hardcover books. So you're taking the same layout you give to the printer and just making it into a PDF, basically.
Oh, and I forgot the best part of the app. The army builder isn't in it yet. And it has no release date currently. It just says we'll get to it eventually. It just basically says we'll get to it when we get to it. Explain to me what the value is in this thing. I got War Room over for War Machine. I paid $110. I have all the rules for that game forever, or at least for that edition.
Well,
and their editions last like 10 years.
Yeah. Well, and it's
what's going on?
Okay. And this is the reason why we wanted to have one of the reasons why we wanted to have this conversation, because just like you just made a comparison to Privateer Press, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, number one, I don't have to have their app.
No, you don't.
Okay, if I want to make it easier, I can buy their app. I can just buy the faction I'm interested in, and probably the mercenary faction if I'm going to use any mercenaries. Mm-hmm. Let's just say what it is. Mercenaries are useful. So
it's $20. It's $20 for your faction.
A little less than $20, right? For that, for both your faction and the mercenaries.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and I have access to it. I can build as many as I want. It saves them for me under my account, and I can go back and I can press
it works
the button.
Offline.
Yeah, it works offline. I can press a button and play my game through the app. Basically, not play the game, but I can keep track of everything in the app. Right?
You can track damage on it.
Yeah, you can track damage on all your models.
You can't track wounds in this 40K app. What are you talking about? How dare you suggest that?
Exactly. And I only bought what I needed. Okay. And they went through and they put in a database of all the cards. right? That's some work, a little bit, but they did the work. But they did the work once,
Mhm.
and then they pay for it. And then all they have to do is when they get new changes, is update the cards that need to be, the models that need to be updated, right? Keep them fresh and up to date, which doesn't take long. I've administered databases. It doesn't take long to make those changes.
Once you have the core structure,
Yeah,
it doesn't take that long. You just repopulate it.
and I have more money to put into models, which I know have a higher profit margin than printed books.
Mhm.
That's I think
It just
what's
it
being
just it
missed is
it,
that
it blows my mind with GW, and we're gonna keep harping on this. Is price point.
you cannot ask anybody who's ever made a book of any type. The profit margin on a book is
Is
crap.
dirt.
All right, so why not let me keep my $50 or half of that $50? Let me keep my $25 and take that an extra 10 and buy another box of little plastic things that I'm going to put together, and more likely buy paint, and you know what I mean. Like, just why
Mhm.
not let me buy physical things that I'm going to actually use?
It just strikes me as weird that you have to buy a physical copy of the book to get a code to put on the app, and you're paying for the app in addition to it.
Yeah.
It just strikes me as bizarre.
What
And
even
like
put?
I don't it doesn't make sense to me. Like there's a more profitable way to do this.
Are we still living in the fantasy time period here
Are
where
we
things
still
have,
live are we still living in like the 2010s?
like,
Because
come
this
on.
system works for the 2010s.
I
I
like,
mean,
well, let me say this. I like having physical books for certain things.
that's
But the
fair.
one thing I do not need a physical book for is my Army Codex. Okay? I don't need one. As a matter of fact, I don't even need it in book form. What I need is the information in that book at ready hands in an app or something like that, just like with War Room. I can pull it up. I can see what it does. I can see the back of the card and the front of the card. If it's two cards, like for a Warcaster, I can see all that
Hmm.
information. Okay? I don't need a book. So stop making those books. Give me the information on an app, and then write lore books, paperback novels. If you want to do things like that, you want to make books, give me lore, okay? Because I don't need, like you said, my lore mixed in with my game rules, okay?
And it's fascinating that like when you look at a GW Codex, about 40% of it's lore,
It's fluff.
and 90% of that's recycled. There's very little new stuff in there. No.
Exactly.
What I want is okay. You want your army book? Give me a bunch of fluff. Give me new stuff. Give me short stories in the fluff.
Yep.
Give me painting art guides. Here's how
Yes.
you paint this. Here's how you paint this. You don't
Eh,
see any of that in the codexes, and I just it
Or here's how we painted that, and here's some
and it
other color options, other
yeah.
color charts, in case you want to try something different.
And at that point, you just make the book $100 and say, "We'll just throw everything in there. Here's your
Or,
universe book."
yeah, the universe book.
They actually
Or,
did that. They actually did that back in 7th edition. The
hold
rule
on,
book, the core rule book was broken up.
look up on that shelf.
The
See where
core
it
rule
says
book was.
Lords of Battle right there? To the left of it, there should be a Painting Citadels miniatures book.
I've got that one too. I've got a couple of them.
Okay,
But they
so
did this at one time with 7th edition. In
if you're gonna
7th edition,
if you're gonna sell me
there
a book,
was
sell me something like this.
yeah.
Okay, something that I don't. It's not about playing. I can look through it. I can see color charts, and I can see, hey, how do I do a highlight? How do I base something or whatever? These are interesting books. Uh,
Mhm.
let's look at other IPs, not necessarily miniatures games, but like let's look at World of Warcraft, right? How many
Here's
books
an
do they have that just do the lore?
yeah. Here's an idea. You've got your lore, you've got your painting stuff. Why don't you make videos of those and charge
There
a
we go. We're coming.
subscription?
We're coming back. Yeah,
Why aren't you like
but I
it
don't.
blows my mind that it feels like GW is the mountain that everybody sees.
I don't need.
It's the place everybody wants to go. But when you get there, it kind of sucks. At least that's my opinion of it.
I don't need
Like,
a $50 book that in 3 years or less I'm gonna have to give away on Facebook Marketplace, right? Because
and I
no
only need
one's
half,
gonna want to buy it.
and I only need half the book anyway.
So stop it. You can't make physical cards anymore, like the faction decks for the War Machine or anything like that. Give me my cards. If you're gonna make me look, or War Scrolls or whatever you want to call them, let's just be honest, they're cards. All right, you make physical copies of these cards, and you can put them in front of you. You can see them. Don't do that. Give me digital copies of my cards in an app, like I already get everything else pretty much in my life, right? Like,
And keep the app updated with changes. If
yeah.
you change something, make sure it's in the app.
So, yeah, exactly. You make a new change. You don't have to write an errata page. Just change my damn card, in the digital app. What I don't understand is how what they do can be better for them even, okay, than making this a digital product. How
How
many
long?
how many people do they already have working on digital projects when it comes to games and all that other stuff? You can't tell me that one of those code monkeys, all right, can't jump and make you a good app, all right, with nice little graphics and all that stuff.
I'm pretty sure you could put that out to the community, and there'd be people who would do it for product.
Somebody would do it for. We're talking about when we built the list with the Cricks conflict
And it's
chamber.
so much cheaper.
Conflict
Like
chamber.
it just
How hard is that? How hard would it be to take something like conflict chamber and put it in an app? Not
here's
hard.
my answer to your question. How long were we waiting on Plastic Sisters of Battle?
Long time.
17 years?
Yep.
16. I'm sorry, 16. The last sculpture I remember is 2003 on some of the medals.
Yep.
The company that took 17 years to release an army that has proved to be so absurdly popular it sold out immediately upon launch is behind in the technology race. Gee, I wonder how that happened. It's
Well,
almost like
they seem to have an adverse, almost allergic reaction to these things. Okay, and here's why I say that.
Yeah.
Blood Bowl Dugout. This is an app that was made a few years back, whatever, for Blood Bowl to use as a digital dugout instead of having to use the cardboard things that you get with your thing. You can keep track of your player's damage and all that stuff, whatever, right? Go look at it. It hasn't been supported in years. Okay. Um, let's go look at some. There's a number of other games that they've had other companies make for them um, that just aren't supported. They put them out. They get support for a year, maybe 6 months, a year, maybe sometimes in some cases a couple, and then they don't just say, okay, we're going to shut this down or do whatever. We're not going to do more of it. They just don't do it, and those people are left, you know, left just sitting there going, what happened? What happened to this game I've been playing for like every day for the past 6 months? That's one of the things that happens when you have your fingers in so many pies, right? When you're juggling so many plates. So you license this out to everyone. Yeah, and it's not all them when it comes to video games. That has something to do with the developer itself as well. But with a company that size, if you have a license that popular and something that valuable, right? Don't just hand it to somebody and say do whatever do what you want with it, and then when you get tired of it, just don't tell us anything. Just stop doing it, and we'll be fine with that. We don't care. You've paid us our money.
It turns out that reflects badly on your brand.
Yeah.
But yeah, like that blows my mind. We got the Codex model. I'm just gonna say it. Any game that you talking a little bit more on things that just strike me as bizarre with GW. Anything that uses true line of sight is fundamentally broken.
Yep.
I'm just gonna say it. And it's funny because you look at games coming out nowadays, and guess what they don't use?
No,
they don't use true line of sight. And there's two reasons why. Number one, people will argue, well, it's immersive, it's realistic. No, it's not. I got a Space Marine over here. He's standing on a rock taller than he is.
Yeah.
I'll give you a hint. He's not dragging him with that in an actual battle scenario. So arguing that, well, I can see him over this building. No, if this was a real scenario, you could not. He's not going to be doing that.
No.
And while it is easy to explain, the number of times it just breaks down is amazing. Like I literally remember a game where it's like, oh, I can see your banner. I'm going to shoot your character and kill him.
Yeah.
It's like, that's the way the rule works. I'm not offended by that. But you got to understand that to the people who argue the realism, that doesn't make sense. And then you got to argue, well, no, you got to see the body. Okay. What about Tyranids? Where according to the fluff, the gun is more sentient than the monster.
Yeah.
If you kill the gun, it's dead. It literally, they're dead in many cases. So does using the body matter, or would that? You open up so many rabbit holes with this.
Which more people are going to the magic cylinder or
and
silhouette model.
I'm going to point out when they do good things. I need to rewind for a second. I just remember the thing I forgot. The thing I forgot from a little while ago before we transitioned to GW. When you whine and complain about miniature games and why you don't like them, please make sure your information is up to date.
Yeah, that's it.
I was in a discussion with somebody earlier this year about how they were explaining how 40K's terrible game. I don't entirely disagree with the sentiment, but their justification was, here's this mechanic that, back when I played was so broken, and it was the 5th edition wound allocation system. Anybody who played 5th edition will agree that wound allocation system was busted if you knew how to use it. But he's pointing to this and saying, this is a reason you should not play this game. And I'm like, that hasn't been a rule for 8 years.
Yep.
It hasn't. I've seen people complain about like, oh, well, this game, there's this mechanic involved. And it's like, that mechanic died years ago. So if you're going to talk about miniature games, please make sure your information is up to date. It's one of the reasons why I play so many miniature games, to make sure I have up-to-date information. Anyway, back on GW, to throw a bone to them, because I actually think that Games Workshop, I get more angry at failed potential than I do at just abject failure to begin with.
Right.
I look at Warhammer and I'm like, God, a few changes and this game gets 10,000 times better.
Yep.
And there's one of the changes that I'm glad they put in is they did their terrain system, and they actually put in terrain that, it's not true line of sight with the terrain. It's called obscuring. If the highest point of the terrain is at least 5 inches tall, you can't see over it. Unless the model is within a certain threshold of like hit points and all that. And it's like, great. It doesn't matter what the physical model looks like anymore. It just, like, that system bothers me.
Mm-hmm.
It always has. There are more miniature games that are dumping that system than there are that are adding them.
Yep.
Star Wars Legion was a good example. They had true line of sight. Earlier this year, they rolled out an update. Technically, it's for competitive play. I haven't heard of anybody who doesn't plan to use it, who doesn't understand, or let me phrase that. The people who say they don't want to use it don't understand the problems with true line of sight. And they rolled out a silhouette system. Your model is this box.
Right.
Or this cylinder. This is how you interact. This is where you draw your line of sight from. Because they're good examples. They had a really cool alt sculpt General Kenobi model. And he's on this like hunk of wreckage with a bunch of dead droids on it, and he's like surfing down like Legolas from Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Looks really cool. That model and then the original General Kenobi model are the same thing in game, but now behave differently.
Yeah.
Because if you're using true line of sight, it behaves differently now. That model is physically higher up. And they actually went through, and it's for competitive play. Most people I've talked to plan to use it. At least stateside tend to use it. They put a silhouette system in. Infinity, one of the big things they did with their 3rd edition was put a silhouette system in. Heavy Gears putting in a silhouette system. Warcaster Neo Mechanica uses a silhouette system. Even games like Flames of War don't use true line of sight as is. There's like, okay, well, you can see through teams in your own unit and things like that. And I just, again, like, I don't see why. Like, I look back, I have a 4th edition rulebook. That's when I started. And it had this like 1-page discussion of how terrain and models worked. And it was models and terrains are classified as size 1 or size 2 or size 3. You cannot see through something that is the same size or taller than the thing you're drawing line of sight to.
Boom.
Regardless of what the physical model says. I can see your Space Marine captain back there over these squads in front of him. Well, no, they're all size 1. You can't see him. You can't draw line of sight through my squad. They're just this wall.
Yeah.
And it's because of that you get really convoluted rules like their Lookout Sir rule that was so weird they had to errata it twice in the same day.
Yeah.
Or within about 24 hours. And that's another point that I have with GW that, again, this is turning into a GW hit piece. But another thing that I think that Games Workshop does that you're seeing less of is Band-Aids. Games Workshop has a habit of Band-Aiding a problem
before
and
they
never
even try to figure out
My
the
perfect example is
cause of the issue.
the rule of 3. I think the rule of 3 is one of the worst things they ever did. Not because I disagree with the intent. Because what happened was one of their developers went to like the first 8th edition Adepticon and got hit with like 11 flying hive tyrants. There was a list that had 18 hellhound flame tanks in it. And it's like, oh no, this is not as you intended. And instead of fixing the situation that encouraged those models to be played in those numbers, they just said you can't.
Yep.
And they put a blanket limitation on it. So now the Chaos Space Marines, their lords, these incredibly egotistical, power-hungry maniacs, you can have the same number of them as the Imperial Guard can have heavy weapon teams? Now, I don't have a problem with the system. I have a problem with the universal limitation.
Yeah.
I was hoping in 9th edition, alongside the points, they would put a number of times this can appear in your army stat. Just one more column. One more column. And it also addresses your question of what counts as a named character, because you can just say this is one.
Yeah.
But it's like, why is this so hard?
Availabilities.
War Machine has it. Warcaster has
Infinity
it. Infinity has it. Although Infinity did this too. One of the biggest problems Infinity's had is order spamming.
Yeah.
You know what happens when you get 17, 20 guys? And I haven't seen all of N4. It's not out yet. But they said that there's a blanket rule in the game that is capping you at 15 orders. And my immediate response is, did you address the issue why?
Yeah.
Because I play Ariadna. The reason I play with 20 orders is not because I want to. It's because my stuff dies to a stiff breeze in comparison to, super badass Achilles. I need the redundancy. And a lot of my big stuff isn't actually that big. Yeah. They had a format called limited insertion where you were limited to 10 orders. I looked through it and I really thought about it, and there was only like 5 or 6 different army builds I could even play because my army's too cheap.
Right.
They didn't fix the problem. They just put a Band-Aid on it.
Yeah.
And then the Band-Aid becomes mechanics after a while, and it's just like, really?
Well, I think when it comes to GW, the problem isn't just the Band-Aids, okay? It's the Band-Aids without, well, like I said, it's Band-Aid. It's slapping on a number of Band-Aids without asking anybody else what they think, okay? Because when you have a community as large as the Warhammer community, whether it's AOS or 40K, it doesn't matter. When you have a community that large, you have one of the greatest resources that you could possibly ever have as a game developer. You have thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people who play your game on a regular basis, right? I'm not saying take everything every player says and make a change on it. I'm saying take that data, pull it all together.
You can certainly read the trends
and see what overlaps. Okay, if you have 10,000 people saying that this is a bad idea, don't do it.
Well, the interesting thing about the rule of 3 was actually very well received when it came out. It was only later on that people started realizing the implications of it, where they're knocking the top off and saying, okay, well, it's fixed up here, and ignoring everything below it.
Exactly.
We totally fixed this balance issue, ignoring the fact that now new players have this really weird, like, arbitrary restriction that is applied uniformly across the game. I'm allowed to have the same number of super heavy battle tanks as I am sniper units?
When you plug a hole in a dam, there was a reason why that hole was made. All right? It didn't just pop a hole in the dam for no damn good reason. But You plug that hole, and you got to look back and see what the effects are, right? What, or even putting a dam in to begin with. So when you have the river flowing, it goes up against the dam, you get a hole in it. There's a reason why that hole happened. You plug it, and you have to watch what the effects are. And if it doesn't fix the problem or it creates a new problem, you have to be aware of what problems it's creating and either decide whether to take your finger out of the hole or fix the problems that come along. And not a year later, or not with a new book, or not with
And
a new codex.
and to tie us back into the topic here of state of the industry, these are things that other companies don't do, but Games Workshop still does.
Yep.
And I see a common criticism of, well, Games Workshop does this, why don't you do this? And it's like, well, one of two reasons. Number one, that's not necessarily a good idea. Many of us, I'm sure, watching here play video games.
Mm-hmm.
The most profitable video games are mobile games.
Yep.
Are you going to tell me that all of the new video games must be mobile games because that's what's successful?
That's what's profitable.
Clearly, you must copy off of them to make your game more popular or to make your game better. And it's like, I don't think anybody in the video game industry, at least on the player side, would really argue that point. No. Does every company need to become EA?
How many times have I played the same mobile game over and over again?
How many times is it the Giant that has the most faults?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the thing. A new company or a newer company has to watch every move that they make financially, and every mistake that they make could any mistake that they make could be the mistake that kills them. All right. So you take Privateer Press with War Machine. There's a set time, basically. If there's emergencies, of course, obviously they need to address them, but they have a set time, an errata cycle, right? Am I correct about that? I think that's the way that it works. They gather data throughout that errata cycle and then make their changes in the time that they are to be made, unless it's a pressing issue that has to be handled right away. So what's better? Snap fixes, hot fixes, band-aids, or just take some time, man. Just gather data. Use the resource that you have. You have a resource that pays you. You don't have to pay for that resource. They pay you to play your game. And all you have to do is listen to them from time to time, and listen to them and sort out the BS and take the good stuff and do something with it. Right? You don't have to hire a consultant. You don't have to pay millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars for someone to tell you what you need to do with your game. All you need to do is get the stick out of your butt and out of your ears. Uncover your ears for a minute. Get some of that money. You're Scrooge McDuck it into your huge pit of money, and I guess you got some money in your ear you can't hear. So you get that out of there and you listen to what people have to say. No, not every player is going to be a resource for good change. But the ones that are going to be invaluable. Because here's what's going to happen. All right? I said it jokingly in a way, but Warhammer, GW, Warhammer, it's a cult. All right? People follow, oftentimes blindly, right? While the leader of the cult is taking everything, and they're taking your favorite army and they're screwing it over with rules changes. They're taking your, they're putting out the new codexes, which immediately make this army stronger than the other one, so on and so forth. You can't play your army anymore because it just doesn't hold up. You have to have a rotation of several armies. A couple different armies, and you're paying them to be bent over. I mean, let's just throw that. You're paying them for this to happen to you every single time, and you still toe the line. You say, "Oh, 40K is the best. 40K is the best. Oh, you gotta love 40K. 40K is awesome. 40K is and you just keep towing that line. You keep towing that line. You know why? Because you're in a cult, and the
It's okay to.
rhetoric has gotten into your brain and rotted a little few of your brain cells, and that's all you can say is 40K is the best. 40K is the best. Well, you know what? It's not the best. It is not the best thing that's out there. Yes, it has some of the best models. Yes, it has lots of product. Yes, there's lots of different things that you can pick up that have the 40K logo on them so you can show your 40K fandom, right? It has a lot of people who play, so you can go into communities and you can usually find a game of it, pretty readily. You can pop on even in a town like this, you can pop on a Facebook page and you can say, I'm looking for a game of 40K, 2,000, 2,500 points or whatever. Usually you can find somebody, right?
Hmm.
Those are things that happen. But one day, one day, you're going to realize that there are other things out there. You're going to actually commit to trying out another game. You're going to find out that you like that game and that the company doesn't, you know, try to fleece you for every penny they can get out of you. And you still have fun. And your friends are going to find out about it. And you're going to have the same kind of community. Maybe not as big, but the same kind of community. And you're going to finally leave that cult. Right? Because your eyes have been open to the fact that they're not the only place in town. Right? They're not the only people that you can hang out with. And yeah, some people say, yeah, but it hasn't happened in however many years DW's been doing it. You know, but
Wrong.
it has.
It has. War Machine gained popularity because it was that competitive game that Games Workshop refused to acknowledge. Fundamentally, that's what it is.
Yeah.
You look at other systems and it's okay to criticize something. If you look at Games Workshop and say everything's perfect, this is as good as it can be, I really think you need to try some other stuff.
You're wrong.
It's like watching, say, the Michael Bay Transformers movies and saying these are the best movies ever, especially when it's the only thing you've ever seen.
Yeah.
Really, I encourage you to ask yourself a question. How many other miniature games have you given a legitimate shot to?
Yeah.
Where you looked at it and said, I'm willing to give this a chance, and I might come out of it liking it more than Warhammer. How many games have you given that shot to? And you might have had a bad experience. That doesn't mean all games are bad.
No.
It doesn't mean everything that's not Games Workshop isn't magic. I've actually found that the Warhammer community tends to be one of the more toxic ones.
And real quick.
Warhammer, Infinity, I'm going to call them out. I'm going to say it. Infinity
Yeah.
community, you guys got some problems. And the X-Wing community has some flakes too. But on the whole, like those are the three that I consider to be really bad. The War Machine one's a little whiny, but I don't see the vitriol that I like. I was talking this our competitive casual divide. I have seen people go on legit freak out attacks over, well, you gave me model commentary that's rules based and I didn't want that. It's like, what? How many times do you see, hey, I've got my Space Marines, I put female heads on them.
Yeah.
Oh, those threads are always fun to watch because they tend to only last about 30 minutes before the mods nuke them.
Well, and this, you brought up something, and I want to make a point about that. I want you, as a people, in general, as a devoted 40K player, okay? Let's say you played it for 5 years. Let's say you played it for 10. I want you to go in the Wayback Machine. And I want you to think, really, truthfully think about your first game of 40K. Your very first time you put models on a table or someone brought their models and put you on a table. I guarantee you, although it was intriguing, it was not a fun experience. Okay? Yes, it was fun in the fact that you actually got to play a game with models, but there are very few games that I have played over time that first game is a completely fun one because you're trying to process a lot of information, right? You're dealing with something that you've never seen before, but you gave it a shot and you took a chance, right? To play a few more games. And then as you learned the rules and you didn't have to think about them so much and look them up every time that you did them, the game became more fun, right? And then you continue to build upon your knowledge and the game becomes even more fun because you get the bigger scope of what's happening. But I take it back to that first game of 40K that you played and tell me that it was the most fun that you ever had to playing a game. No, that first game is never. Well, I played my first game of Heavy Gear Blitz and I thought it was fun, but we were also playing.
You were literally screaming during our Warcaster demo.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
were literally screaming.
it was.
And that's a good point. It's not even a case of it wasn't fun. Ask yourself the question, your enjoyment of it. Have you enjoyed it more? Have you enjoyed it less? That's fine. It's a demo. The demos are always weird.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So I don't understand why people they have like a weird memory of that first demo game of 40K because they've been playing it so long, right? That they've superimpose their knowledge of the game now and take it back to that first game and view it completely different because they're viewing it through an experienced player's eyes, right? Something that they
I,
had no idea what happened during that game. Now they know what it is, and they're thinking that they knew what it was then, but it
I want
didn't.
to I want to tack on to that. I'm going to expand it to more than just the demo. I want you to really think back. How many times did you have to play Warhammer? How long did it take you to get a good grasp for what was going on and how to play? 6 months?
Yeah.
When you look at other miniature games, remember that. I've known people who said, well, I tried War Machine for a month. It wasn't for me. You didn't learn 40K in a month.
Nope.
You're having this half-formed opinion here. Get to the end, see where you are, and then make your decision.
Just make honest comparisons. That's all I'm saying. Just make honest comparisons.
Yeah, that's the other thing is be honest with yourself.
You know, don't
I've
don't sit there and say, no, 40K was, you know, it's the greatest and there's, nothing wrong.
it's amazing and it has cinematic moments in it and all
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
And
yeah. And then,
I can count on one hand how many of them I remember,
no,
and most
no.
of them
The
aren't.
most cinematic moment I've ever had in a 40K game or a Warhammer game, whether it be AOS or the other, is when I rolled so many dice I couldn't hold them in both hands. It's like an avalanche of dice.
Mhm.
That's a cinematic moment, but everything else was just
The
trying
other thing,
to beat back masses of undead hordes that respawn as soon as I do it, or
that does tack on to another thing of consider who you're getting a demo with.
yeah,
Warhammer, you probably learned from a close friend. And even if the game wasn't fun, the experience of playing was.
yes,
So when you're going to a store and you're getting a demo from somebody you don't know, keep that in mind. Imagine you and your friends playing this and add that social experience on top of it.
mm-hmm.
And then also remember that, you're not going to master the game after one demo.
Nope.
You're not going to master the game after a month. Okay. I would argue that most miniature games you can't make an informed decision upon until you're at least on game 20.
And if you honestly play 40K or AOS, and like once again, I don't want this to seem like a hit piece on DW. We're just trying to
If you
make
like Warhammer,
sure.
we're not saying it's a bad thing.
Nope.
All we're suggesting here is saying, hey, there are a lot of other products out there. Please consider giving them a shot. Please consider giving them your support. But be careful
But
because Games Workshop and Warhammer is not normal.
no.
Okay. You're looking at it retroactively. You're looking at it from a demo you got with a close friend. You're dealing with a company that can throw piles of money at problems. This isn't true anywhere else.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Well, and that goes back to the reason why the title of this video, the state of miniatures gaming, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, know many people who play games like that. It's the most popular game.
Mhm.
Let's just be honest. 40K, AOS, Warhammer in general.
It tops the statistics
Right.
every year.
Okay, so there are a lot of people who play those games who know that other games exist. Okay, but can't possibly fathom the fact that there's something out there that they might like more than the game they're currently playing, for whatever reason, whether it's financial, whether it's friends, whether it's whether it's social, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. The reasoning does not matter. Okay, but they're not looking at any other games, and what they're doing is not just letting those other games do their thing or die or do whatever, it doesn't matter. What they're doing is they're further isolating themselves from things that that are different, that are innovative in a way, or new, or could possibly be something they like more, or could possibly be something that could make the game that they love even better. You don't know what to ask for if you've never seen it, right?
So
So say you want to play another game, say you want to play War Machine, or say you want to play Warcaster Neo Mechanica, but you still want to play 40K, cool. But maybe playing those other games, even if it's in a demo form or a small game form, like Skirmish Game and Warcaster or whatever, are going to show you things that you might be missing in the game that you love, right?
and that's where a lot of my complaints come from. Until I played other games, I didn't have any of these complaints. I thought there was nothing wrong with the way Games Workshop did their codex model. It works. What's wrong with it? And then I played other game systems where they don't do that, and I'm like, oh,
That's
there's
what's wrong
much
with it.
better ways. There's much
Yeah.
better ways to do this. And when it comes to favorite games as well, please be willing to. One thing we have an issue with as a society is a willingness to be wrong.
Yep.
If you'd asked me 2 years ago what my favorite miniature game was, I'd have said War Machine Hordes on the spot.
Yep.
You ask me right now, it's either Warcaster or Heavy Gear.
Yeah.
Because I got more experience with different systems. Heavy Gear went through its edition update back in 2000, starting really last year in earnest, and I got involved there, and that's helped a lot. And we've been playing Warcaster, and I mean, good Lord, I'm excited to play more. We've had an absolute blast every time we played.
It's the thing about it is we have, and I'm sure it'll happen eventually, but we haven't had a blowout yet. We've only played a couple games, but I'm just saying, like, it doesn't the potential for just blowing someone off, blowing someone out is, I don't want to say it's eliminated, but it's very low because everything just kind of.
I think what Warcaster does really well is because one thing about Warcaster, and I'm guessing by the time this has gone up, that demo hasn't gone up yet.
Not yet.
One thing you will notice is stuff dies fast. Squads are just melting in single activations. Warjacks are getting blown apart. Even if nothing's happening for you to try and win the game, you still feel like you're accomplishing something. Yep. You're still rolling dice. You're still killing stuff. You're still blowing things up. You're still firing fireballs at your opponent. You're still frying them with electricity.
You're not afraid to make moves that you wouldn't make normally because that unit or that squad, that Warjack
is too critical.
Is gone forever. Mm-hmm. Because you get to bring it back. Yeah, it's going to take a little bit of time.
In our couple Warcaster demos, I haven't seen as many. I mean, we've had in both games, both of us have had multiple situations of YOLO. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
I'm going to send this guy in there. He's totally dead, but something really good might happen.
Mm-hmm. And it does usually.
You would never do that in like a Warhammer or a War Machine or something like that. And that's where it's like, you know what? We've been having a lot of fun with that system. Even like I said, even if it was a blowout.
But I just don't. I don't know what the potential for blowouts is. Because
I think the blowout would come from, I know what I'm doing. I'm playing against somebody who's never really played before, and in particular, they don't realize that the objectives matter that much.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like I said, I think the only way to truly have a game, when this, like I said, this is not a lacking point in Warhammer, is there has to be a point to it. Okay, annihilation is not an objective. All right, I don't care how many times you say it. Tabling an army just to win should never be an acceptable objective. There should be other things that you have to do in the game to where you have to think about your moves. All right?
Yeah.
I don't how many games have you seen where someone just wrecks
Run
someone?
screaming, run screaming in the middle of the table and smashes their opponent,
Yeah,
or just sits back and blows them off the table.
because the
Um,
objectives don't matter. You know why they don't matter? Because there's always that secondary objective. If I table him, I win.
and I'll give 40K this. 9th edition fixed that. Tabling no longer auto wins the game.
Well, that's good.
If you table your opponent, you still get to move models around. You finish out the 5 turns and then you tally the score. You can get tabled and still win,
There you
and
go.
that's good. This ties into a point, and I guess we've probably been running for about 2 hours now, so it might be a good point to close off on.
Yeah.
Is fundamentally we are playing a multiplayer game.
Yep.
We are. Any mechanic should be both fun for the player using it and the player it is getting used against. And that is something that you can definitely tell the companies that have realized this and those that have not.
Yeah.
Games Workshop, keep in mind, this is still the company that has a mechanic that says there's one guy who picks a model within 3 inches, and his opponent, and the user of that model, hides a die behind their back in either their left or their right hand. If you guess which hand it's in wrong, your model dies with no dice rolls involved. Did you have fun watching your giant monster die?
Nope.
I'm going to extend this as well to the double turn in Sigmar. It's not unbalanced. Sigmar's been built around it. It's not broken. Is it fun?
No.
Is Seize the Initiative in 8th edition 40K fun?
Yeah, I
And
don't.
I want to leave you with that, where it's like, the goal. Okay, the goal is to win. The point is to have fun.
Yeah.
Are you having fun? Fundamentally, that's the only thing that matters. What I would challenge you to do is to expand your horizons. You might have fun playing something else. You might have more fun than you're playing with Warhammer or whatever miniature game you're playing. Guild Ball just died. You have no idea how much I want to get Ethan, our Guild Ball guy, to get a game of Warcaster in. I think he'd love it.
Oh, I think you would too.
If you've played Guild Ball, that's not a huge jump mechanically, and it feels very similar to it. But is there a fear of, well, I have fun with this, I don't want to try something else? You're not cheating on a significant other here.
No.
You can do both. No one said you can't. Are you having fun? Are you willing to try something and see if you have fun doing it? Are you willing to give it the chance to let you have fun?
Right.
Really ask yourself those questions.
Okay. And I want to end on, or are you done with that?
Yep, I'm good to go.
Okay. I want to make a little closing statement here as well. There's a reason why. There's a reason why those things that you just said, as far as broadening your horizons and trying other things and so on and so forth, why they're important. One of the reasons why they're important is you don't know something's broken until you see it work correctly. Until you see something work better. Okay? Number two, if you're in the instance of Warhammer, GW is never going to change what they're doing unless they have a competitor that gives them a run for their money. Never. If they can maintain being the Goliath that they are and don't have to change what they're doing because they have no threats, they will never make a change. Why? It's been working for us for decades, right? Why we need to change it now? It's been working for us for decades. We've been doing this a long time. We've been doing it longer than the other companies. We know what we're doing. When a contender steps into the ring and they have to face them, they're going to look deeper and harder at what they're doing. They've done it in the past. when War Machine started gaining popularity, other games started gaining popularity. People got tired of doing the thing. They did just enough to get those people to head back in their direction, and they went right back to the same BS over again. Just enough to change the tide. So, if Warhammer is what you love and you never want to play anything else, more power to you. Have fun with that. Enjoy it. Paint, model, play your armies, buy several armies. Have a good time with it. I'm not being sarcastic. It's what you enjoy doing. If that's the universe you want to play in, there's people who still play World of Warcraft every day because that's the universe they want their virtual character to live in, right? Even with the issues. So if you've made up your mind, that's the only place you want to be when it comes to miniatures gaming. Nothing wrong with that at all. But if you're sitting there and you're going, if you said more than once in the past year, 6 months, I can't believe they did that. Oh, that's not right. Oh, they screwed my army again. Maybe it's time. And I don't mean go headstrong into another game and you've obviously spent money on your game. But sit through a demo and maybe work. There's people like me, people like Nick, everywhere who enjoy a game and want to show people how to play it. And that doesn't mean just like a 2 model demo or whatever. I know a number of people, and I've done it myself, that will let you borrow an army for the day, right? While you're playing and play with you with their armies. They've already done the work. All you have to do is just learn the game. And they're not going to tell you, well, I've let you play with this army for the last couple of weeks. I think it's time you buy your own. No, they're getting to play games. They're not going to be like, Grr. So you can experience another game without spending any money, and then decide whether you want to, and then you still don't have to go headlong. I'm just saying, open the blinds to the
Don't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone.
Right. Open the blinds to the place where you and the rest of your cult members live. See what outside looks like. You might see something that's interesting to you, and just give it a shot. Go to that guy like Nick who's always talking about their game. There's always one of them at least that's like, this is an awesome game. You should play it. Go to that guy. Say, man, you've been talking about this game forever. Can you show me how to play, and can you just spend some time with me on it?
I literally just had this with someone pre-COVID with War Machine. They're like, I'm getting sick of 40K. I want to try something else. You've been mentioning War Machine. Can you show me a demo and walk me through how to play? We played about 4 or 5 games, and then COVID hit, and obviously things have shut down since then.
And if you don't find what you're looking for there, try another one. And if at the end of it, none of them are for you, and you want to continue to play 40K,
that's fine.
That's your choice. But don't just blindly follow because it's what you've done.
And your 40K experience might improve.
Yeah.
You may enjoy 40K more, not because you tried other game systems and didn't like them, but you'll learn things from other game systems. You'll learn habits that just up your enjoyment of the game. For me, a good example when I learned to play War Machine was clean measurements, obvious dice rolls, take your time, and go through rules.
Yeah.
Amazingly, that actually makes games more enjoyable. Not even from a competitive standpoint, even a casual scenario. You'd be surprised. You might take something out of it and say, yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of this. Or it might actually help you enjoy your game more, the experience in other places. Not because you like 40K better, but because they showed you some other things you can do.
Yep.
It might give you a complete fresh view on 40K.
Yep.
You may go through, really nail down the aspects of 40K you like and realize, I've been going to a lot of tournaments, but maybe I like the narrative aspect more. Maybe that is fundamentally the most important part. Because maybe you went out and you found a better competitive game, but the narrative didn't catch you. Well, I might suggest that you're more interested in the narrative. And that's fine.
And the last thing that I'm going to say, I think we've been is it's simple. Okay, competition breeds innovation. All right. If there isn't any, nothing changes. So just keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. If there's something that you really want out of your game, whatever it is, you know, you have to. It's not going to change unless they have to. So, if you have any questions, go ahead and leave it a comment in this video. Like the video. We try to answer all the comments. They were behind a little bit, but we pretty much, if it's something other than, you know, something that we need to put into thanks for watching on a question, we like to get to them. So, comment on the video, communicate with our Facebook page, the Facebook Messenger, What Game Now. So facebook.com/OneGameNow. Hit the send message button. We have Instagram. Comment on our photos there. We try to use it a little bit more as we go along. Obviously, subscribe to the channel. I see a lot of people. Our views are getting to be a little higher on some of our videos, but I mean, most of them aren't subscribed. So we're trying to work towards monetization at some point, because we'd like to continue to do this for as long as we can and make better videos. So a little bit of money never hurts with that. So go ahead and subscribe. We got like 60-70% of the people that watch our videos aren't even subscribed. So just hit the little button. You can click the bell or don't click the bell. The bell will let you know when we have videos come up. Things like this live stream, which is kind of like last minute. And we're going to continue to do some of these as we have discussion topics to go through. We'll have a conversation when we're playing a game and maybe want to expand on it. So it's not always the most concise, but it's our opinion, and it's the way that we feel about it. So facebook.com/WhatGameNow. You can get all the links to all of our social media actually at whatgamenow.com, or at the top of the on the YouTube banner. We have all that stuff up there. Visit any of them that you want. Follow on any of them that you want. Don't follow on the ones that you don't. And just let us know what you want to see. We're going to be doing more heavier blitz content, more Warcaster, Mechanica content, which mostly commentary and things like that on other games. Nick's done his first impressions and stuff for 9th edition. We will have more War Machine content coming, I think, too, now that we've built an army for me, and we're trying to get our buddy Josh to do some more videos on that. We want to play more of that. And we have other things coming up. There's some board game content, some card game content. I'd like to do some Super Show content for the wrestling game. All kinds of stuff. But if it's a game that you want to see, let us know. And if we have the ability to do it right off the bat, we'll do it. We're going to be doing some more Guild Ball. Ethan isn't able to get out, even though things are opening up. Not able to get out and do it. But as soon as we can, we will get some more Tabletop Sports Network. So there's a lot of things coming down. And I'm learning the editing portion and making the uniframes and doing all that stuff, trying to find the best way to do that. It takes time. So hopefully you're seeing improvement as we go along. And we'll continue to do that. So thank you so much for watching. Nick, do you have anything to say before we go?
I promise I don't hate 40K.
No, he doesn't.
It's just a situation of
he doesn't hate 40K. He just likes CW.
You can criticize things.
It's in that case, I don't think it's so much the game as it is the company. So
yeah, that's fair.
So, and I would still like to play a game every now and then anyway. But it's not one of those games that lends to like playing a game every 6 months.
I play it, but I think I understand its limitations better.
Yeah.
I play other miniatures games. When I'm playing 40K, I know why I'm playing 40K, and that's the experience I'm going to get out of it.
All right. Before we get back in that hole, thank you so much for watching. Check out the top of the header on our channel for all social media links, or go to whatgamenow.com. Once again, try new games. And on that note, don't forget to keep asking the question, what game now?